Pillinger. I'm chair of the committee. We have committee members in the Civic Centre along with officer support. The meeting is being live streamed via YouTube and will be available on the council's website. Some housekeeping for those of you in the Civic Centre. There are no fire drills planned. If the fire alarm goes off, please leave by the emergency exit at either side of the room and congregate in the car park. Please turn your mobile phones off and switch your microphones off when not speaking. For those joining us by Teams, please remain muted and indicate at the appropriate time when you would like to speak, and I will bring you in. I'd like to welcome our new member of the committee, Councillor Claire Burton-Johnson, to our first meeting. Councillor Burton-Johnson replaces Councillor David Howarth, and we would want to place on record our thanks to Councillor Howarth for his service to the committee. I'm now going to ask other members of the committee members to introduce themselves, starting on my left.
Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, colleagues. So my name is Michael Green. I'm the councillor representing Moss Side Ward, and it's my pleasure to be Vice Chairman of this committee.
Good evening. I'm Deborah Ashton. I represent Charnock Ward in Penwitham.
Good evening. I'm David Bollenberg. I represent Banbury West.
I'm Will King. I represent Longton and Hutton West.
Okay. Hello, as you've noticed, I'm Claire Burton-Johnson, councillor. Oh, sorry. Claire Burton-Johnson, and I'm the new councillor, as everybody's just noticed. Don't know what she's doing.
Claire, we're really glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm not sure I am.
And our officers.
Claire Gornall, Democratic Services Officer.
Darren Cranshaw, Head of Democratic Services.
Thank you. We have apologies for absence from Jane Bell. Members are reminded to declare any interests they might have at this point. Does anybody have any interest to declare? Good. The minutes of the last meeting, have you read those and do we approve them? I propose we approve them.
Happy to second those.
Thank you. Do we need to vote officially on that? No, that's fine. Recommendations update. We have a review of the updates, and there are two that say they are completed that I think we should be asking for more details. One is the June 2025 meeting, minute 5.7, member involvement in the local plan. I think we'd still prefer to have a bit more detail. And minute 24th of November 2025, minute 6.7, youth provision extended across the borough. And again, I think there's a little bit more to do. So, Head of Democratic Services is going to seek the clarification that we need. Subject to those changes, are you happy with the recommendations update? Yes, thank you. I welcome Councillor Wes Roberts, Committee Member for Finance and Assets, who will present the item on the draft budget update for 2026-2027, and supported by Neil Holton, our Director of Finance. Thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm really pleased to be here tonight. Welcome to Councillor Burton-Johnson. I've always found Scrutiny a helpful friend, and I'm sure you'll find it a helpful committee and very insightful. I'm really pleased to be here tonight to present the get Scrutiny's views on the draft 26-27 budget, which is a balanced budget, and I do think it's fair, robust, and ambitious as well in terms of our priorities as an administration. I'll do a little bit of a preamble and then head straight over to Scrutiny, because I'm sure you've got lots of questions. The team have been doing an amazing job. and we're in a quite strong position for this time of the year, despite moving things around in central government. I know it's all calm down there, but yeah, the team are doing a great job. So you'll see that we put a 1.9, proposing a 1.9 council tax increase. The rationale for this is to get the balance right. You know, we feel that people are still feeling the squeeze in their pockets, but it's quite often that when you're setting budgets that you would use the September inflation rate, which was 3.8%, and we've gone for half of that rate at 1.9%. So that's our rationale there. And you'll see in the paper that a little bit later on, it still keeps us quite relatively low when it comes to council tax, which is quite good when you look at all the districts across Lancashire. Probably worth just saying a little bit around kind of the background or the context we're working in. So with regards to local government reorganisation, it's kind of irrelevant when it comes to setting a budget for this council. We've got to set a budget legally as if South Ribble will continue forever, and that's what this budget does. And it also, you know, alludes to kind of future year gaps, and that we'll continue to address as we've done when we've identified them before. In theory, this is a multi-year settlement from central government, but I think finance colleagues would beg to differ, because there's always a bit of a rebasing of business pools, business rates on an annual basis, which doesn't actually mean it's a multi-year settlement that's static. And this kind of has been quite a big shift in the way that local government finances has worked, because there's a Fair Funding 2.0 has come in this time, which is basically seen how money has gone to councils, shifted around, and it's more linked around deprivation. So that does see South Ribble Council lose approximately £500,000 for next financial year, and that will rise to £900,000 in 27-28. And that will, in terms of, just to pick up on kind of some of the wider context in terms of what's coming in April, is around food waste, and you'll see from the paper that the government aren't putting up any more money for food waste. So they have, in terms of the capital side and getting things on board and purchasing the equipment, but in terms of the revenue side, they're not putting up any money, which is just a kind of another shortcoming really of how local government's been shortchanged, which is not good, whatever side of the party you're on here tonight. So that is kind of added to our picture, but you'll see that we've actually had a little bit of a gain because our employee contributions for the Lancashire Pension Fund has gone down, so that kind of evens that out, which is quite helpful. And I just wanted to kind of pause on, it's around Fit for the Future. So we've had a Fit for the Future programme in the organisation for quite a while now. The team have done a really amazing job when we knew that there was going to be a budget gap for the year we're entering, and the team identified lots of different projects, and for next financial year in 26-27 we're going to be saving £1 million without any real change to the services that our residents are going to feel or receive, and I think this is just testament really. It's not about, I don't think there's much waste in local government, but I think it's about the continual commitment to innovate, and our officers have been doing a great job of that, and it'll see us save around 1.5 million over the next 2 years. So I'm really pleased to be here, really pleased to thank the officers, and just to say that I think this is a really fair, robust, but also ambitious budget, as I said earlier, and it will allow us to continue to focus on delivering and supporting community organisations through our community grant scheme, focusing on social housing through putting £1 million towards that next year, and we'll also see a lot of our capital programme crack on next year in terms of Leyland Town Deal and Penwitham Master Plan, as well as investing in our parks and open spaces. So I'm happy to take any questions that the committee may have. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you for your comprehensive introduction. On page 20, paragraph 8, the first bullet point, an increase in council tax of 1.9% is proposed. How affordable is this for our residents, and those particularly on low incomes? Is there any kind of assessment that we make prior to setting the rise in terms of affordability?
So I think we really did have affordability in kind of the heart of the decision, and Neil might want to add on it, but if I remember correctly, the no one will see a rise in the South Ribble Borough Council tax of more than £10 for the annum. So I think for a council, is it 9p per week for a Band D property? And we've tried to get that sweet spot. We do also have kind of a council tax exemption side of it. So if someone's really struggling with the council tax, then they will be eligible for that. And obviously there's lots of work that we do in the kind of the communities team, which is around if someone was eligible for pension credit, then we could help them access different benefits as well. So it was a big part of it, and that's why we've tried to keep it as low as we could, just reflecting the climate out there at the minute.
Do we, those exemptions that you mentioned, do we examine the level of those year to year, or are they just sort of on a sliding income, inflation-based sum?
So I'll bring Neil in, but this year we're actually exempting care leavers as well. So we do review it on an annual basis, and we're kind of adding them to the list this year, which is really good, and actually is minimal cost to us as an organisation, but a real benefit to them as individuals and residents. But I think Neil might be able to say more a bit about the process, because it kind of sits in a different part of the organisation as well.
Just in respect to the policy itself, that comes to council when we make changes to those policies. We do give council tax support to probably the maximum levels in most instances already. Councils can make their own choices on some elements of those support, but our support scheme is relatively generous. There will be a report alongside this, as Councillor Roberts says, around council tax for care leavers, which was a specific request as well.
For those listening, I use the loop system and it's not actually working at the moment, so I'm getting another neck halter. Thank you. Oh, gosh, that's a lot better. Thank you. David Bollenberg.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bollenberg.
Councillor Roberts, I echo what the Chair said, that I thought the introduction was very comprehensive and really interesting. A couple of things jumped out at me, but I'm going to take them in reverse order. Do you have any data on the council tax exemptions that you could share with the committee? How many there are each year and how much that costs the council? I think that will be interesting to put into the fuller picture.
Yeah, I think we can definitely provide that to the committee. I don't have it to hand,
No,
unfortunately,
I
sorry,
appreciate
but it's a really good question, and it's something that we should continue to look at. I think different topics come up at different times, so I think I've been approached by different members around whether we could have an exemption for people who are terminally ill.
Yeah.
And that's something that we've actively looked at, and we're kind of looking at different councils that have introduced that and how that's gone out, because there are different kind of implications with that from a policy perspective, because obviously sometimes it can be clear cut, but they can be a bit tricky. So we do actively look at, can we expand, can we focus on deprivation and help those who need it in our society, but we can definitely get the latest data to you.
Thank you. And then to jump to what was going to be my only question, my first question was, you mentioned about the council tax increase being 1.9%, which you said was half of the 3.8 September inflation rates rise. That struck me as an odd decision to take it, just make it 50% of the, which I guess what I'm asking is that what happened? Did you just go, we'll make it 50%? Because later on you were then saying we went for a sweet spot. I think I'm just trying to understand the decision making there.
No, I think that's really fair. And I think it's always finding what's right for the organisation and also for residents. So for roughly every 1% that we rise council tax, and we've got to remember we only keep 10% for our residents that may be watching on the YouTube for all the millions or thousands. We only keep 10%. For every 1% we rise the council tax, we bring in about £90,000. So given the state of kind of medium-term financial strategy, we didn't think it was sensible to have a freeze of council tax, because then we'd be missing out on finances this year and then next year. But we did want to reflect the kind of wider mood of residents of feeling that squeeze. So we thought the best thing to do would provide a below inflation rate, and we decided on 1.9. So 1.9 rather than 1.99 because I thought it was a nice figure of half the rate of inflation.
Thank you. I think I'm just really looking to make sure that it's not just an arbitrary choice, that there is some mechanics behind it, because if 1.9, why not 1.5 and save people money? Or if 1.9 is 1.9 generating enough income for the council to provide the services. I think that's where I'm coming from.
And I have a subsidiary on that one as well, which is the government's assumed that council tax increases for district councils will be 3%. We're raising by 1.1% less than that. How does that affect our income, if at all, from the government? Does it affect our income? And what impact will it have not on this year but in subsequent years?
Yeah, I think the good questions and ones that we have thought about, all the kind of the one it's picking up on Councillor Pillinger's points around kind of what would that mean for future years. That's baked into the figures for 27-28. Yeah, you're right, Councillor Bollenberg. I think it is one of these things where you try and just do what you think's the best thing, and I've tried to pick. We as cabinet have tried to pick something that's credible for the organisation, but then also trying to be helpful for residents. And I think it's better to have a smaller rise each year than kind of a no rise at all, because then you kind of feel the knock-on effects. So if you look at kind of council tax freezes since 2019 that we've done, which have, there's a really good principle for, and it's really helped residents as well, but it's also cost the organisation in some shape, way or form, and you could argue that the kind of medium-term financial strategy would look a little bit smoother if we'd kind of had a smaller increase of, say, 1% each year. But it's kind of just going with the times, and also we're quite confident that what I didn't want to do is go even less than that, because then I didn't want the kind of financial gap for next year to dip over into, say, 2 million. So we're at that 1.8 stage. We've got the business rate reserves pool that Councillor Tomlinson started a few years ago, and we've been putting in case we ever lost the Lancashire business rates pool. So I'm confident at the minute with where the gap is between Fit for the Future, variable changes, and then also the business rates reserves, we're going to be comfortable to set a balanced budget for next year as well. So, yeah, I'll pause there because I'm sure you've got other thoughts. I'm
still not clear where the 1.9% figure came from. I'm only used to doing household budgets or in the past church budgets, and you'd work out your expenditure and then decide how much money you needed to raise. So is that the way we do it?
So the clearest answer I can give, just to try and give an insight, is usually what officers would do is provide us with options of 1% will bring this, 2% will bring this, 3% will bring that. I think officers provided an option of 1.99%, and I thought a smooth option would be 1.9%, which is a real clear message to our residents, say we're delivering good, high quality services, ambitious corporate strategy, and we're also delivering it at half the rate of a council tax increase, half the rate of inflation council tax.
Thank you. That's really helpful, knowing that there's the options presented to you from which you're able to make your cabinet decisions. That's what we were trying to get at. Michael Green, Councillor Green.
Thanks, Chairman. Before I go on to the question I was going to ask, it's a further supplementary for me, given the response that you've just given, Councillor Robertson, and welcome this evening. So essentially, is it fair to say then that was a political decision? It wasn't based upon the need of the council, it was based upon a political decision to make it half the rate of inflation?
So it was a decision in the best interest of the council, and then also reflecting the tough times that residents are having up and across the borough. So it's both. I guess I'll expand on that in a sense of saying I'm a council taxpayer as well. We all are here tonight, and I just kind of think, well, what would I want my council to do? And I want my council first off to be fair, and I think it's a fair figure. That's all I can say. There's no anything hidden behind it. It's just kind of I feel I felt in terms of my household and my income and things like that, everything's generally gone up 25%. Everyone's adjusting their own budgets, and if it's the if it was the TV license going up from April, it's another £5.50. So it's just kind of trying to ease it and try and help and show that we're a listening council and doing the right thing for our residents, but also looking out for the long-term interests of this council and authority.
I get that and agree with the logic, but nevertheless, had you put it at 1.99%, it would have been virtually the same. But by saying 1.9, you can make a statement that it's half the rate of inflation, so it's a political decision. But anyway, we'll leave it at that point. Can I move on to another point, if I may? So at the bottom of page 20, there's a bullet point which sets out the capital investment of over 36.9 million being proposed over a 3-year period. How realistic and achievable is the delivery of such a programme? Because we have had difficulties in previous years. And I'm also thinking in particular from the perspective of capacity based upon slippages and reprofiling that does take place, sometimes genuinely, but sometimes it happens rather more than we'd like it to.
I think they're reasonable questions, and I think we're all frustrated sometimes when things don't go as quickly as we'd like them to, and then we've got to look at honestly about why that is. Is it about capacity? Is it about things that are outside of our control? Maybe it's something else. But in terms of, if you remember when I first brought the first Q1 this year to Scrutiny, we did a big reprofiling, and Neil and the team did a really good piece of work and stripped out and reprofiled things that where we honestly didn't think we were going to spend this year. So rather than holding them till the end of the year and then going, oh, we're going to slip it into next year, they said, right, okay, what are we going to do? And a lot of the Leyland Town deal spend moved across into next year. In terms of how realistic that is at the minute, I'd say it's pretty realistic based on what we know at this moment in time. We always just want to put everything on the table and be honest about it. But the big reason why I say it's probably quite realistic is because the Leyland Town deal is now moving on at speed, and everyone can see it. The social housing on Quinn Street's coming up, and it'll have tenants in soon as well, which is great news. But a lot of the money and the activity is going to be happening that year, so it's quite robust as robust as we can have it at this moment in time. But you've got to also put it in the context, just to kind of LGR and what's going to happen. So we will continually keep it under review and obviously keep this committee updated as and when if anything changes. But that's our best working assumption.
Thank you. Just for the members of public who might be looking in on YouTube, the end of the year is April.
So the end of this, what are we now? We're in February now, aren't we? So as in, we're talking, we're in March. I was talking about in terms of the kind of looking from 26 to 29, so it'd be kind of by next April, not this April, next April, a lot of the Leyland Town deal spend would have done, which is a big chunk of that council.
I'm simply trying to clarify for members of the public that our annual year for finance is not January to January, but is April to April. I'm correct, Hunt?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on. Councillor Deborah Ashton.
Perfect segue. My question was around local government reorganisation. On page 21, you've set out I suppose it's all about uncertainty at the minute, isn't it? Because we don't know where we're going. Have any resources actually been included in the budget to help us prepare once we do know what the proposal from the government is or where we're going? Because obviously there's going to be an awful lot of work needing doing. So have we got any provision in the budget at this stage or not?
It's definitely something on our kind of minds, and it's something that we're preparing for. I'll let Neil say a little bit more because he's a bit more kind of involved across the Lancashire picture.
In terms of the revenue budget directly, there's no provision for LGR directly. Now, clearly, existing budgets for staff and resources, myself included, working on LGR projects, so existing budgets will be towards some of those costs. In terms of the budget itself, it's more likely that at the moment we set aside some element of reserves for that transitional period at the moment. But at the moment, there's nothing nothing yet agreed, but I understand that an agreement is coming around some transitional resourcing of it. But in terms of LGR itself, no, there's no money within the revenue budget ongoing. It will be existing staff resource, existing resource using to develop that.
Again, for clarity to members of the public, I think I'm right in thinking that, strictly speaking, there will be a statutory instrument from central government, which will probably be in the autumn. We will know in June what the shape of the new unitary authority is, but we'll have no legal basis on which to work until the statutory instrument is in place, which leaves us in a bit of a strange place to be, where we have to do stuff assuming it's going to happen, but until the statutory implement is published, we don't know that. We have no legal grounds for doing that. Would I be right?
Yes, yeah, that's correct. And ultimately, the only legal entities that will exist are the existing legal entities up until the point of vesting day. So it's only the councils that are involved in it that will exist up until then.
Can I just
Councillor Ashton.
Yeah, just pick up on one point. I'm not sure if I heard you right in what you were saying before. When you were talking about transitional funding becoming available, is that potentially something that might come centrally, or would we be making provision for transitional funding?
No, it would be all the councils across Lancashire potentially making provision for transitional funding.
Thank you. David Bollenberg, Councillor Bollenberg, you have the question at number 5.
Thank you, Chair. We're staying with page 21, paragraph 13, the mid-year settlement. And I think, first of all, we obviously welcome the 3-year settlement. But I was wondering if you could talk us through what the Fair Funding 2.0 actually is, and why there has been such a significant impact on the council.
I think I've given my best answer on that, so it might be helpful if Neil adds anything that I may not be as a county on.
So without going too far back, fair funding has been coming for a very long time. So there is over 10 years of analysis gone into kind of fair funding. I think this is why it's called 2.0, because it's actually gone live this time. There was various pieces of work across the late 20-teens around different formula around adult social care, children's social care, homelessness, to develop what was going to be a new funding model for local government as to how they distribute the centralised funding. So clearly council tax comes to ourselves, but then the centralised funding, including business rates. Across the course of this financial year, 2025-26, government launched a consultation on a new proposed formula, which they released and released the analysis of that. They then updated that in the policy statement, and in the provisional settlement produced an analysis based on this. Fundamentally, the drive is towards, 1, reduce grants, so a single source of income for local government alongside council tax, and then alongside that a movement towards a more deprivation-based formula. So there are individual elements within the formula itself. So there is a part of the formula that's for adult social care, a part of the formula that's for homelessness, developed on various different factors that then a total funding source feeds into, and you get an allocated sum. So fundamentally, government has changed the funding landscape of local government completely across this year. With that move to deprivation, South Ribble Council has not done as well in that formula. So as a result, we are losing income across this 3-year period. There's some transitional element to it, but as you can see by the drop-off in terms of where we stand budget-wise, we haven't done as well as some other places from that funding.
Thank you. That actually leads me to a supplementary question, and I think I might know the answer to this. Given its name, Fair Funding 2.0, do we consider it to be fair?
This is a good question. I think it's a fair principle, isn't it, around deprivation. And if ultimately there's more deprivation in other parts of the county or country, then we as a council need to look at that and go, okay, we've got pockets of deprivation. How do we best target our resources to tackle that and help those in need? And it's that landscape, isn't it, of kind of and expectations of residents and the ever-changing world of social media and wanting governments and councils to fix things and do things, and we've got to be realistic and honest and truthful about what we can do, what our limitations are. But then if we see something where there is a need, we need to be able to step in and be agile enough to be data led and kind of put our resources where it needs to be. So I think it, from what I've seen so far, I think it is fair. The government have listened on business rates pooling, which wasn't initially included. I'd encourage the government to think about the food waste collections, because that is that isn't fair, and that is a new burden. But in terms of the general principle of the formula, it seems to be fair so far.
Just one, thank you very much. I think just to round off that question, and that was a really comprehensive and well expressed answer. I'd like to say that I think the fact that we are doing so well in areas of deprivation compared to others is a testament to the work that the council does. So thank you.
Can I move you on to page 24, paragraph 29, which is about the Lancashire Pension Fund. The sums that we will be paying as an employer are going to be reduced from 17.9 to 11%, which is a reduction of 6.9%. My personal experience of actuarial examinations of pension funds is that between any 4-year period, which they're often done at, one of them will come with a great big surplus and another one will come with a great big deficit, depending upon the stock market and other conditions. Are we confident that this reduction is not going to rebound upon us?
Like you say, Chair, it's something that's reviewed on a kind of 4-yearly basis. What my finance team say is, which is actually that it could have potentially gone further. And I think it was over Christmas time, in the December meeting at Lancashire County Council, the Pension Fund Board, or whatever it's called, kind of didn't make a decision, and they were actually going to meet again in January to decide whether they were going to reduce it even further, because they thought it was quite, they potentially could have done. And Neil is looking to see whether technology's failed us, but we believe that it might actually have got the percentage contribution might have actually gone down further, which would save us more money. But it's still, finance colleagues still think it's quite prudent. So we will, if we can't find it now, we will provide that detail. But it does give us something to plan for, and as things adjust over years, we'll adjust to.
So is this set by the County Council?
It's set by the Lancashire Pension Fund Committee, which is independent from the County Council, but it is an offshoot of the County Council currently, because the Section 151 for the fund is also the Section 151 of the County Council. But it is set independently, and there's various members from across districts and various others represented on that committee.
Would I be correct in thinking that if the council officers felt there was any risk to this, that they would be taking precautions?
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of the reduction this time, as Councillor Roberts said, the decision was deferred. As part of the discussions, there's an increase in the contingency being kept in the fund this time. So that was the key element of the discussion. So the initial reduction was alongside measures to retain more of the contingency within the fund itself, to ensure that they had a bit more protection against those ups and downs.
Thank you. Councillor.
Thanks, Chairman. Can I take you to page 25, please, which highlights the council tax rates in the district councils across Lancashire. And can I ask you a question relating to that, and particularly whether at some point in the future a new unitary council is formed? So if you look at the amount of Band D council tax charges across Lancashire, what's likely to happen to council tax levels in any new unitary council? I mean, obviously there are different models on the table. We don't know where this is going, if indeed it goes anywhere. But certainly looking at some of the models, there's a possibility of a 2 unitary model, which will take in a number of councils right across East Lancashire, but would take it from West Lancs right over to Pendle. And of that, four out of 5 of the other districts, for instance, have a much higher rate of council tax than we levy in South Ribble. Equally, another model which may come to the fore is a 3 unitary model, which will be ourselves, Chorley, West Lancs and Preston. And if you look at Preston's council tax level, it's 54% higher than South Ribble. So what would happen in the event of a new unity being formed in terms of the council tax that South Ribble residents will be asked to pay?
So thank you for the question, Councillor Green. I would encourage all the residents that are watching on YouTube to fill out the survey if you've not already. I think the leader of the council's already done it. As everyone will be aware, we've kind of supported a proposal, a 4-unitary model, which would see us go with Chorley and West Lancs if that was to happen. I think for the purposes of tonight, what I'll say is, I'm confident in our capability as a council and our finance officers to tackle the challenges that come, if they come and when they come in the future. And if there's variations in rates, which there will be, it won't just be council tax, it'll be all the other rates as well, then there'll be lots of preparatory work to tackle that and deal with it when it comes.
Nevertheless, if you're a council taxpayer that's struggling, and I'll go back to the discussion that we had about 20 minutes ago about whether we should increase council tax by 2.9%, 1.99%, 1.9%, and the need to balance the needs of the council against people's ability to pay that in a time when they are struggling to pay bills. So we came down to 1.9%, and yet we could end up being in a mix with councils with much higher council tax levels, which will result potentially in council taxpayers being asked to pay a lot more money, which will be a concern. But I realise we can't answer that tonight, but it is something to be aware of. Just moving on though, another issue if you look at potential new unity council in relation to council tax is council tax collection rates. So our levels of council tax collections in South Ribble has traditionally been one of the better ones across Lancashire. There are a number of those councils, and I alluded to some of them before, that we could end up being in a unity council with who have much lower rates of collection. Now, if we ended up in that scenario, that would have an impact upon the council tax our residents pay, but ultimately the services that are provided for the residents of South Ribble, which will be a concern to me, and how do we deal with that issue moving forward?
No, it's good to think about things like this, and this is, I think, where the collaboration of various mindsets and viewpoints is good. I think it's really important, any new venture in terms of LGR that we're going to go into, which isn't even within our gift to give, that we go in a spirit of kind of, it's not them v us, it's right, we've got this situation, we deal with it together. And it might be that they've got a really good model for X system and we've got a really good model for collecting council tax, and it's just about learning from each other and implementing what's best for the organisation across the piece to try and get the best result for all our council taxpayers, wherever that boundary is drawn.
Councillor Bonberg. Oh, sorry, no, my apologies, Councillor Ashton.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to pick up on, well, I've got 2 questions actually, on the clean and green neighbourhoods section, page 27. And the first one is around the food waste collection, which I know you've alluded to already. So I suppose the first question, and I haven't looked at all the detail, but is the whole of the 1.3 million around the statutory food waste, or are we doing other things as well? But then, as I understand it, we are now having to pick up the day-to-day costs of the new service, even though the government is funding the investment in the bins, as it were. So is that all? Yeah.
So yeah, that is just the capital element of it that's in there in that bullet point,
Right.
the statutory part.
Okay.
And you'll see as well, I know it's not on this paper, but it's kind of linked, that later on we're holding back 300 grand to potentially purchase an extra vehicle for the food waste collections if we need it, depending on when it's kind of see what it's like when it's introduced, and then we might purchase another vehicle. So we're holding a little bit of that back. For,
Out of the allocation that's coming to us from
it'll
central government.
just be slipped into next financial year.
And then my second one was on the second bullet point under that heading, around the affordable housing, and if you could just say a little bit more about what's that proposed to be spent on.
It's a good question. So affordable housing is really important to us as an authority, and what we have decided to do is put this aside, so then as and when opportunities come up, whether it be through the planning system or it be through direct delivery, that we'll have a reserve that we can then draw upon. So there's no, we are actively looking at how we can deliver more and do more in this space, but it's not been assigned to any one particular project. So as and when projects are developed and come through formal processes, you'll see kind of money being drawn from that reserve or other things, or Section 151s, etc., etc. But it's just there it's a statement of intent, but then also to make sure that we're agile, that if and when something does come, so if, for example, there was a planning application and there was a developer that maybe wasn't able to fulfil what the desire that we'd have, that we could try and do what we could to drive that kind of force that we've got, but then also balance the demand of people on housing waiting lists and the demand for 1 and 2 bedroom flats that we know that private developers just aren't doing because it's not viable for them. So we step into that space like we've done behind us with Jubilee Gardens, and we're all proud of.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bollenberg.
Apologies, I was reading the wrong question. On page 29, Fit for the Future proposals, in the second row, what changes are proposed to make a saving or increase incomes from car parking strategy, and how will this impact on local small businesses and residents? And I guess what I'm getting at, especially in the latter part of that question, what impact assessments have been done or are planned?
Yeah, no, thanks for the question, Councillor. I think impact assessments came up in the consultation responses, especially in the car parks around Bamber Bridge. So that's is something that we've seen in the feedback. I think when I was at full council last week or the week before, I did talk about kind of the process that we've gone through, making sure it was fair and thorough. I think I was thinking about this earlier in the sense of, like, I remember there was arguments around impact assessments when it came to big changes around Brexit and was the one, wasn't the one, and there's an element of kind of proportionality, I guess, with things like this, and we'll always try and balance kind of the need of what we think of it as our asset, but then also about the needs of the community and what it needs to be balanced against. So in terms of Fit for the Future, there is a proposal in there, and there was a consultation outlining where we'd potentially think about introducing charges. As of yet, there's no decisions have been made on that, and there's been some quite good suggestions from various residents, councillors, also business owners, and people who work in the local area or live in the local area, and we're working through them to kind of see what the best outcome is for us in terms of a Fit for the Future programme, but also what's best for the community. But if you want any further details in terms of like what's actually baked in or not, then I'm sure Neil can expand, because it's quite a long table, but it's there to try and help rather than hinder.
Yeah, I would be quite interested in talking about that at some point. I don't know if that's something you could provide to the committee.
Yeah, we can absolutely have a chat about what would be helpful to provide to the committee and pick that up as an action.
Thank you. I think my next question. So we're staying with the Fit for the Future proposals. Again, page 29, but this time the 10th row. What income generation proposals are there for the Leyland Town deal, and how has this assumption been arrived at?
So Neil's probably going to be a bit closer to the detail than me, but it's generally around the kind of the centres and the rents from that point in kind of the town square and things like that. And I don't know I can't think how many units there are now in the market stalls as well. So it's kind of an accumulation of that. I don't know whether that is the full kind of income target or it's kind of a partial one, and then it will get bigger over time as more vendors and more businesses move into the area. But is that the general?
So this is partly was in the original business plan for the Leyland Town deal that came to council. So there was various commercial units, there is the markets in there, there is some element of housing in there as well. This is the net figure after all of the cost and borrowing that ultimately it's helping to support the budget as a whole beyond that. But it was part of the original Leyland Town deal business plan, and we brought the report more recently, an update on the budget there.
So, yeah, forgive me, I wasn't around when the original one came to council, sorry. Has there been a change in that in the update? Has there been an evolution of those assumptions and those income costs?
So yeah, I think so I wasn't around either, but the general principle around kind of has a bit of change. I think it was not last full council, the council before, we brought back a new model, and what the previous model assumed is that we'd only keep half of the social housing. The new model, we're keeping it all, so it kind of balances off that. It also takes into various different assumptions of kind of contributions from developers and also potential borrowing that we currently don't have any borrowing, but we may in the future to support things like this that are important. So I think we were quite pleased to bring back that financial model, for transparency, but then also show the sustainability element that is going to contribute to the running of the kind of overall project and not drain on council resources.
Councillor Green.
Thanks, Chairman. Can I take you to page 31, please? Paragraph 54.
Sorry, Chair. Can I just jump in on
Sorry, I
on
didn't
this
see
bit?
it. My apologies.
Don't worry. It was just to ask a little bit deeper onto the Fit for the Future plan, which sounds great. About £1.5 million of savings, which is great to hear. I was just wondering if you could run through a little bit about some of these projects that you've been working on, so I can see that the biggest saving that the council has driven, one of the biggest savings, is the extended producer responsibility piece. So would you be able to explain to me how the council has managed to drive savings there?
Because we've got such fantastic finance colleagues who make our lives a lot easier, and it's about presenting the options, and these are the ones that have kind of been endorsed, and there'll be a future tranche of this because of the medium-term financial strategy. I'm sure Neil can add more detail in terms of this list, or it might be a case of a separate briefing or further information provided, but I'll leave that up to Neil because there's quite a bit in there.
So that specific line isn't in the Fit for the Future proposals. That one's within the pressures lines, and I think that's because ultimately that is additional income to the council that's coming through the extended producer responsibility. Now, we already manage our waste services to an extent that, while there are additional requirements of that funding, we believe it can be managed within existing budgets, but that one isn't within the Fit for the Future proposals because essentially it is just new income to the council.
And just one more on this, which is as well, we've got some pretty decent savings put against two areas, one of which is deliver improvements to office accommodation. If you wouldn't mind just running through how that will drive savings, and then also as well the pensions reduction in employers' contribution.
So in respect to the office accommodation, that's largely in relation to this building. So we've been doing various pieces of works to vacate elements of this building that can then be rented out. So a large part of that relates to this building and the ability to now flexibly use the space within the building, but also the wings that we have rented out. In respect to the pension reductions, we'd assume that there would be some element of surplus because we'd seen historically there have been. We were nowhere near the assumption of the reality of what it came out. So this was our initial assumptions of what we would be able to do on staffing. Clearly later on down in the list you'll see there's a far greater growth of what the reality that became.
And just to be clear on the delivering improvements to office accommodation, so that is 100 grand. That's 100 grand of assuming that this building will be rented out, is it?
It's largely already achieved because we've already rented various elements of the building out. So a large part of that is already through the NHS, through the people who are already within the building.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think we're then on to yourself, Councillor Green.
Thanks, Chairman. Page 31, please. Paragraph 54. And the report states that there remains a deficit of almost £1.8 million for 2027-28, which needs to be addressed, otherwise it will be carried forward into subsequent years. What specifically are you going to do to actually tackle this deficit?
Yeah, no, really good question. I think I alluded to it a little bit earlier. So we have the biggest kind of threat to our council, as a lot of us know, is the Lancashire Business Rate pooling system, and that's brought in generally around £1.8 million of income, and that has been protected in this funding settlement for this year. But what we've been doing, what Neil and Louise, previous Section 151 officer, and Councillor Tomlinson have been doing is taking an active decision to have a bit of a slush fund in case we lost that pooling rate, and that pot sits at £2.9 million. Okay, and what the idea of that is not to say, oh, okay, well, we can just we can cover our eyes, not make any changes, not make any savings, and then just use that, and oh, it's run out. The idea is that we can kind of, if we needed to look at changing things or removing a service or whatever it might be, and that's not an intention at all, it'd give us that time and space to make good decisions, think about how we can innovate services, and then tackle that balance. So in terms of the 1.8, or I'll just call it 1.8 for rounding, in terms of that gap for 27-28, we are actively looking at fit for the future further proposals, or income generation. There's been an initial kind of workshop with officers that's making its way through with the finance team and looking at kind of what each proposal may account to, or amount to, sorry. And then what will happen is Cabinet and the leader will be presented with kind of various options to look at, almost like you think of it as almost like a menu of options to kind of go, well, would you be interested in doing this? It could say this, or it could generate this, and then we would take it forward that way. So we'd like to see a big chunk of that 1.8 delivered through the Fit for the Future, like we've already going to be delivering 1.5 over the next 2 years. So what you'd like to see is the second year of that delivery. So it'd be for 27-28. It's about 500,000 now. You'd like to see it raised to probably over £1 million, if not a bit more, and then the rest of that, whatever we can't save that year, would be offset by the pooling rates pot of 2.9. So if you had to say use £1 million, you'd use that, and then we'd have 1.9, and then we'd have to tackle it the next year, assuming we weren't going into LGR. So we're in quite a good position and a robust position, and we're actively working through choices and being proactive.
Councillor Roberts, thank you for that explanation. You think you use the term slush fund. Do you wish to withdraw that as a term?
Slush fund is probably not the right term, and I think it's. I don't. To be honest, I probably shouldn't use words I don't know the definition of properly. But it's a reserve pot, an earmarked reserve pot. Which what we do is as a council is we put money in places where we kind of think, oh, there might be a risk there, so therefore we're going to put it to one side, and our council officers make sure that every penny stays there until it's needed.
Thank you for that. So, I mean, when you, as a cabinet, are looking at these options, is that a point that you might wish to consult with the Scrutiny Committee and might gauge the wider views, if that might assist you in that task? I'm sure colleagues would be willing to look at that, but I'll leave it with you to consider. Can I take you further down to the bottom of that page when we're talking about reserves? And I've been a councillor for, I think, 22 years plus now. And this council has always prided itself in the level of reserves and future planning for financial matters. But what will happen to the level of reserves that we have as part of local government reorganisation if and when it does take place?
The question went one way and then went the other way quite quickly and caught me off guard. But yeah, I think ultimately I was speaking to Neil and the team about reserves and where our reserves are, say, now to where they were in 2019, and they're at pretty similar rates, even though we've delivered quite a lot. That said, some of the capital spend is baked in with some of them reserves as well, so it would probably drop a little bit further. You know, we want to get on and deliver for our residents now and get projects through the door as quickly as we can. And we'll deal with LGR as and when it happens. And Neil works across Lancashire with all the Section 151 officers, and we will provide that. You know, they make sure that we're going to put aside what we need for LGR as and when. And there'll be certain restrictions, kind of, if we were going in that state of when we can spend, what we can spend. So, for example, not this budget, but the next budget might be the last one that we set as an authority, but we won't know that until later this year, if not further. But then me and Neil were having a briefing a few weeks ago, probably before Christmas actually, and Neil was kind of explaining that there are certain things that actually, you know, he can spend or borrow for as a Section 151 officer, and that actually can't be stopped in the sense of just because we're going through an LGR process in terms of like borrowing money, etc. So it's there's various different kind of, it's quite an intricate question, and appreciate that wasn't maybe the most direct answer.
I wonder if we might have a discussion about in more detail about that under a local government reform heading, perhaps at a future meeting. It'd be good to be able to understand the parameters within which we're working. We realise that we're in this space where we expect this to happen, but the legalities of it are nowhere near yet. But it would be useful to us, and I hope to you, if we were able to explore that together. Thank you. Councillor Bollenberg.
Thank you, Chair. If I can direct you to page 32 on the 5th row, there's an earmark reserve for the apprentices of £150,000. I'm just wondering, why is a reserve needed and when is it going to be spent?
It's a really good question. I'll always repeat, I started my kind of professional journey as an apprentice, so I'm really keen to see them in the organisation. And I know it provides a good opportunity for people. And we were recently at the Shared Services Board, but with us and Chorley, and it actually, one of the papers was about the talent pipeline that we're focusing on, and there was people that have now got jobs in kind of senior positions as team leaders who had previously done an apprenticeship in the organisation. So it's not just for young people, but it's also for people who want to just retrain as well. Me and Neil always have a kind of a debate around earmark reserves and about the size of the pot and what size quantify should be on the list and whether it should be consumed into things. I think what that is about kind of the timing of recruitment, but I'll pass over to Neil to say a little bit more.
So what we've seen often in teams is that teams will ask for a short period of funding for an apprentice who then will move into a role and then be funded permanently. And actually what often happens with this reserve is it ends up not being used, but the having the reserve there almost prompts we can use an apprentice for a period and then the post becomes available and they move in and are funded from that budget. So often actually the reserve doesn't end up getting used, but it almost facilitates that happening.
Thank you. I've got no further questions on that one.
Well, that concludes our questions from the panel. Sorry. Okay, Councillor Bollenberg.
Sorry, that was me confusing things. Again, on page 32, paragraph 59, reference is made to general reserves being over 1 million. What is the rationale for this, and could it be used for other things such as to freeze council tax or spent on the benefit of the residents?
So I think this goes down to a kind of a long-standing agreement or decision that full council made, that 4 million was about the right balance in terms of sustaining a shock to the organisation in comparative measures in terms of our revenue budget and in-year things that could happen. We've always kept it at that, and it's kind of grown and grown and grown a little bit, and it's there for now at 5.0.3, but we'll always commit to keeping it at 4 until council says otherwise. You know, there could be a reasonable thing to go, well, actually, because of the rise of various costs, should it actually be a 4.4 or whatever it may be, but that's kind of the general principle. The finance colleagues think that's the prudent number to keep.
Thank you. Can I just a quick supplementary on that one? It will be useful to us at a further meeting to have a short discussion on whether that reserve figure set at 4 million might be better if it was index linked, so that it was then regularly reviewed, but I don't think we need to go into that. Oh, you're happy to answer that, Neil?
Just one comment, that it is reviewed as part of our external audit value for money assessment, and that's one of the occasions when they consider whether that's a reasonable sum of money as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your responses to those questions. I realise it's been quite probing. And we need to move on to agenda item 6, the Revenue Budget Monitoring Report for Q3 2025-26. I hope you'll be pleased to know that we've got less questions on this than we had on the previous one. I'm sorry, before we move on, I do need to ask if any of the members of the council who are not on the committee wish to ask any questions. We have 3 online. Councillor Phil Smith, Councillor Karen Walton and Councillor Kath Unsworth. Do any of you wish to ask any questions? I'm taking it silence means not. Thank you. We will move on to agenda item 6. There are no members of the public here who could ask questions. We have recommendations before we move on.
Thank you, Chair. Some of the themes from tonight's meeting that the committee might like to consider as recommendations. The committee thanks the Cabinet Member and Director for attending and answering questions. The committee welcomes the comprehensive budget report and proposal to extend council tax exemption to care leavers. The committee is grateful for the commitment to provide further information on the council tax exemptions available and the financial investment involved. The committee looks forward to receiving copies of the impact assessments associated with the car parking strategy. The committee offers to assist the Cabinet as proposals to meet the 1.776 million deficit for 2027 and 2028 as they are developed. The committee requests that an item on local government reorganisation be added to the agenda for a future meeting of the Scrutiny Committee. Thank you, Chair.
Are you happy with those recommendations? Yes. Thank you. Thank you again for the way you present those recommendations each meeting. Very grateful to your ability to sum it up so well in such a short amount of time. We move on to agenda item 6, the Revenue Budget Monitoring Report, Quarter 3, 2025-26. Again, it's Councillor Wesley Roberts and supported by Neil Hatton, the Director of Finance, and I will invite Councillor Roberts to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is the revenue budget for quarter 3. I only propose to say 3 things, which are we are currently predicting at the end of the year will be £10,000 overspend, which is really good news and really good testament to the finance team to see it so close to the actual predictions. And then I just wanted to talk about 2 things. So the first one was around the property directorate and the overspend there. And I think it just is quite good to tell the full story there around, yes, we are overspent. Some of that has been due to work that's needed to be done to buildings in terms of maintenance ahead of lease renewals, which along with a lease renewal would be an increase in rent most likely. So it's kind of, they go hand in hand. And then obviously there has been various kind of increases in I can't think of the word, kind of renovating and maintaining our properties. But we've actually taken on a newly established joiner and general maintenance operative, who will hopefully bring down costs over time. And then also we've got a compliance manager within the property services, which will help us maintain our properties and make sure that we're a good landlord, because that's what we aim to be, whether it's commercial or domestic. And the second thing I just wanted to talk about was Worden Hall. I think Councillor Howe, who is not on the committee anymore, but I'm sure we'll be listening or checking in with Councillor Burton Johnson later. So Councillor Howe, along with everyone on the committee, has always challenged us on Worden Hall and around the narrative and around the financial sustainability and the model of it. And I think that kind of digging has continued me to keep digging with the finance team to understand what it is and what's the story we're telling here. And what it's come to kind of, when me and Neil have been discussing it, is that basically there was already an income target or an income generation from Worden Hall before the Worden Hall was redeveloped. And since then, it's always shown as, in kind of when we bring these reports to you, that there's a big overspend on Worden Hall and it's not paying for itself. And that's not actually the case. So what was happening was we were reporting in 2 different bits of the organisation around where income was coming for Worden Hall. So in the in the property side and property and park side, there was it was meeting its income target for what was already there. And then in kind of Caroline's side, which is so the Worden Hall and the event side, they got lumbered with lumbered's the wrong word, but they got the task of meeting the income target of what we thought Worden Hall would bring in as extra income after the renovations. And when we've been reporting the kind of loss of money or overspend on Worden Hall, every time we've been coming to committee, what we've been actually saying is we're not making as much as we thought we could. Actually, the building is paying for itself and doesn't really cost us much, if at all, breaks even. I think there was an FOI recently where it fluctuates over a few years and kind of a 10 grand loss up normal. It pays for itself to keep the doors open. But what we've been focusing on here, and it tells a bit of a negative story around Winhall, which is not actually the case because it's really good and valued by the community, is that we're just not making as much as we said we were going to. That said, it's a shame Caroline's left, but because you might have some further details, but last time I spoke to the team, there was lots of events planned in quarter, kind of going into the next quarter. There was at least 10 or 11 events planned, and they're actually, the team are under that much work that they're thinking about potentially taking on more resource to help the team because there's that many bookings. There's also, if anyone's interested, whether it be on committee or watching on YouTube, there is a fair, wedding fair soon at Worden Hall, so get yourself down there. But I'll pause there because I just wanted to mention them two things. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. You have you've gone ahead of us because there are some questions we might decide we need less detail now. Congratulations, I think, are in order at the acute budgeting that there has been that leaves us with an overspend of only 10k. I think that's, am I right, 0.08% of budget, which is, I think, congratulations are in order to the team. Thank you very much. The general reserves are going to increase by 1.5 million. Does this mean we're actually underspending? Could you talk us through the figures?
So some elements of the amounts going into the general reserves, and I was trying to get, sorry, apologies, I was trying to get the list up because it's at the bottom of the report. Some elements of what's going into the general reserve are extra funding that we've had in year. So some elements are unannounced funding that we've received. So one of the elements is that extended producer responsibility grant, which was in year we were informed there was an additional allocation in there. So we've moved that element into reserves. We've put a little bit of a food waste collection grant that we received into reserves. So ultimately we are going up in reserves, but a lot of those are from unannounced things at budget time.
Thank you. On page 36, paragraph 9, which refers to total budget, it's shown in Appendix 1. What percentage of the total budget is the forecast overspent? Well, I've already, I think, calculated that as 0.08%. And could percentages be used to help understand the financial story in the way that we report?
Financial articulation is Neil's skill set, and I think your skills are better than mine in providing the percentages. So I'll pass to Neil.
I think the danger with percentages sometimes is that on very small numbers you get very big percentages, and sometimes it can distort. You can see an overspend of £1,000 on £1,000 budget is 100% overspend, whereas I'm not sure that's where the focus should be. So there's a role for them, but they can sometimes distort where you should really be looking and where you look away from.
Thank you. And on page 36, paragraph 10, does that we've talked about this one, I don't think we need to ask that question anymore. It was about the reserve and whether it needed indexing. So we move on to Councillor Ashton.
Yeah, sorry. I was going to ask a question on Worden Hall, but I think you've pretty much covered that off. And then I was just going to attach something to the back of that, but I think you may well have answered that in response to the question Councillor King asked earlier, and it was about the income targets for here, more particularly for the sort of the conference suite, as it were. And have we got an income strategy for that? Although Neil said that a lot of the income is actually coming from letting out large areas of space rather than what might be small amounts in the rooms. But still, have we got a strategy for generating income for this building?
Yeah, there's like a little subgroup of officers that have have a strategy and then also kind of an action plan off the back of it. I know our officers in property are actively looking at kind of how we can best maximise kind of space and usage and bookings, and you'll see as part of kind of the budget process, our fees are kind of in line now with what we think's kind of market rate, but also kind of there seems to be a big appetite of whenever we're kind of speaking in meetings of kind of public sector are always kind of looking for space, and it's kind of to maximise that, and it's also services where people come as well. So we've got the NHS bit at the back, and then you've got the blood centres that come as well, and we've kind of eased the transition of them using that, but then also using the car parking with the charges and that kind of using the iPad and things like that. So it's kind of, I think it's thinking about the customer focus and kind of having different options, so then people want to come and use it, and it's a good hub as well. But there's kind of a next tranche of work that officers are doing. I think maybe we could take an action to think about how the team could maybe report back. I think there's a wider point around how we could do a bit more member engagement, or at least briefing on Fit for the Future, and kind of saying kind of the story of where we've been, rather than just a list of projects. Well, what does that project actually mean? What does that mean for our residents and things like that? Because I think that would help us understand more, and then we can understand. We can go out into the community and go, listen, our council's doing a really good thing here, and we're actually saving money because of X, Y, and Z, and you're not noticing any different. Your bins are still getting collected, and etc. etc. So. Yeah, no, thank you for the question, but we'll take that as an action.
Can I ask a subsidiary question on the use of the COP banqueting suite? This is probably the largest single space in Leyland in terms of public auditoria, beside the churches. Do we have any strategy for linking the availability of it to, for example, our cultural strategy that's being developed?
Well, that's a good question. And the culture strategy will come forward really soon. And I'm sure Caroline, who I can see is looking at me from my left, will be thinking about that actively. And we're always trying to have that commercial mindset. But I think you might have planted maybe an extra olive or branch to that. So if we're not already, we'll make sure we're doing more actively. But it's, like you say, it's kind of connecting different groups. And I know the Leyland Community Hub recently paired up the Morris dancers with a new venue, and it wasn't here, but it was somewhere else, and it's just kind of the specific needs of different groups, and it require different things. So it's kind of trying to facilitate, what might work for us, but then also pairing up different partners as well, to help each other across the sector.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Councillor Bollenberg to contribute.
Councillor King wanted to come in, I think.
Apologies.
I'll try not to take it personally.
No. I'm sorry, Councillor King.
No, thank you. On the commercial mindset, it kind of does move me nicely too. I do have a question on Worden Hall. So thank you for explaining that. We understand that it's pretty much cost neutral. So thanks for explaining that. It doesn't negate, though, the point that a lot of capex has gone into that property, and the whole purpose of that, the justification made at the time, was that it will allow us to hold weddings and all sorts of events there. Now, I appreciate that it's a good step forward that we're having a wedding fair and things like that, but has any work been done to understand why are people right now not signing up for it? Is it knowledge? Is it cost? Has that piece of work been done?
So I'll do a little bit at the start, and then I'll pass over to Caroline. And I think it'd be kind of that we've always been quite honest and open with Scrutiny around kind of having the right setup there, and there's been various different iterations in terms of staffing and models and where it's at, whether it's at with museums and culture, or now it's better with events. And we were quite honest that we didn't quite get it right. There's a lot of money's been spent, and I think it's actually valued by our community, and it makes the kind of one of the top 10 parks in the kind of top 10 green parks in the country even better, and that's great. But you're right, we need to kind of make sure that we're getting as much bang for our buck, or whatever you want to call it, that we can. And I was a little bit pessimistic when presented with various options about kind of in this latest iteration of changes that the new team wanted to make and things like that. And the consensus around Cabinet was, no, actually, this is, and listening to Councillor Thomason, this is the best, I'm most optimistic I've been. And over a short period of months, I've been kind of like, okay, I've been like blown away with kind of the enthusiasm, the dedication, the professionalism, and the expertise that the team have shown at Worden Hall, which has led to a lot more bookings, kind of a lot more just making use of various things, and that kind of trying to harness the energy to make sure it is reaping the rewards as a council, because ultimately if it succeeds then our residents succeed because it goes back into funding services. But I'll pass over to Caroline because I know there's a whole host of things the team have been doing to try and make it work as quickly as we can.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. Yeah, I think it's fair to say that in sort of like the last 8 months, we've really put a lot of work into this. We've developed we've created a new business development team specifically for Worden Hall. So we've got a business development manager and a weddings and functions coordinator, and they have done a lot of work in terms of putting in those embedded processes and doing the communications and making sure that we've got appropriate marketing like materials. They've done a lot of work in terms of approaching sort of different organisations to spread the word in terms of what the offer is at Worden, and obviously we'll continue to do that and explore lots of different opportunities. I think in terms of like sort of the bookings like that we've got so far, we've got eight weddings booked in this year. We've got 12 parties. We've got 3 christenings. The council is also running a lot of its own events, obviously to raise the profile of the venue. We've got lots of inquiries on the go as well, and we've even got events booked in like for future years. Obviously have to be mindful in terms of like sort of weddings, people tend to book those sort of years in advance, but we have got things booked in for 27, 28, 29 even. So we are doing a lot of work. We will continue to do a lot of work. In fact, I've just today received a compliment that was sent in from somebody who held a 60th birthday party just last Saturday, and it's extremely complimentary of our team, of the building, and the customer is saying that they would have no hesitation in helping us promote the venue, and they would recommend it to their colleagues and friends, which I think is really fantastic, because that is what we're trying to do here. We're trying to make sure that this is a place that can be used by the community for their celebrations and sort of like life milestones, and I think we're doing a really fantastic job so far of doing that.
Can I just add on to that around the kind of, it's some great stuff, and it's a full package. It's the kind of, you've got to think, we've got El Tanos there, we've got Folly Cafe there, it's the community spirit and the buzz you see in the park, and we've got to keep going with that. And I had a really good other point, but I can't remember what it is now. But I'm sure it will come back when you actually supplementary.
Yeah, no, thank you. And it does all sound really interesting, and it does sound great. Just, and all sounds like steps in the right direction, but just in terms of that commercial part of it, then you alluded to kind of building a bit of a reputation, sharing the word. Have we found out that the reason why it's not had the sign-ups that maybe we would want it to, is it because of awareness? Is it a marketing piece? Because I'm just conscious, if we're going to be pumping any more money into it, where is the best place for us to allocate that resource? Is it marketing or is it something else?
So I think it's a few things. Sorry, Gary, feel free to say, but I think it's a few things. It's been a bit stop and start, a bit go, halt and go, and kind of, have we got the right people? Oh wait, no we haven't. Oh, that's led to a bit of a kind of tumbleweed moment of kind of, hiatus, and then thinking, but now we're proper on the throttle, and we're not just going to get up to speed, but we're going to do it in a sustainable way, which is kind of getting to 6 on the motorway at 70 and keep it there and get going with it. And what I want to do is continue to improve the reporting we give to Scrutiny on this space, so that we kind of align the financial year with the kind of calendar year of bookings, so that you can see what's the progress been made quarter to quarter in terms of, we've had this many bookings, that's generated this income, etc., and it might be a little bit backward looking, but I want you to kind of see that reassurance, because next year it's looking like the team will meet the income targets that we're setting, and then from that point we kind of go, okay, well, where do we go next? And we've got the capital pot alongside Worden Hall to use if we need to, but we're going to use it strategically, because we're conscious that councillors and the public will want us to use their money as they would, and we're not just going to put money into it if we're not going to see that return.
And just to be clear, has that piece of work been done of why have people not been signing up to the extent that we wanted them to?
I think if Caroline wants to come in, I think there's a lot of things I've been saying as well, and it's when we've been developing the new model, that's the backward thinking that and looking and reflecting that the team have been doing as to why things haven't been doing. But if you've got any specifics, Caroline.
I think the important thing is that we've obviously brought in this new team with the relevant skills and experience. They've got a lot of experience from the private hospitality sector, and that's made a massive difference. We've reviewed the fees and charges as well to make sure that we are a competitive venue, but that we're also covering our costs. We've also brought the bar in-house as well, which is obviously going to contribute to income generation for the building. We've also put in place arrangements and contracts with catering providers so that when customers are approaching us and saying, you know, this is what we'd like for our event or function, we're able to meet those requests because we've got that flexibility in terms of, you know, doing what they want us to do in terms of like food and drinks offers. And I think that's what makes a massive difference is having that flexibility, being able to be responsive like to customer needs, and as I said, that skills and experience. And you know, we have created a dedicated casual pool of staff who are there obviously to deliver like at events. They're now well trained in, you know, excellent customer service, as you can see from the compliment that we've received. And so I think all these things that we've put in place are really going to help to strengthen, you know, people coming and wanting to host their events there, and obviously coupled with more sort of like marketing, which we feel confident in being able to do now because we've got all the basics right, and all the necessary ingredients there to deliver a really good service.
Can I just add one thing there, Chair, which is Caroline said explicitly we've got a casual pool of staff. That is what it is, and that, you know, suits some people in the hospitality sector. I think the ambition from members on Cabinet in this space will be over time we would get into some system where we had a kind of, we knew what was coming and we could offer contracts that were kind of guaranteed for regular hours, because that's it's just getting the right model at this moment in time and then moving and ambition and being more sustainable. So I just wanted to pick up on that.
Thank you very much. That's dug into that a bit more. We will probably end up coming back to it, but it may be that you might anticipate the questions at some point at the end of the year with the plans for the following year. Councillor Bollenberg, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to move us away briefly from the world of commerce and into the world of culture. There are refurbishments taking place at the Leyland Museum, the South Ribble Museum. We're just wondering where they're up to, and when do you think residents will be able to view our cultural heritage there?
Yeah, so on them two things, you know, technically on my area, there have been thorough plans considered around the museum. I know there's been further information requested from Cabinet on them, so we'll wait for them to come back, and then obviously there'll be next steps involved. In terms of the culture strategy, I know that's been considered as well, but if someone was able to say when that would come to a formal meeting of some sort, that'd be helpful.
The intention is to bring it to the next Cabinet meeting.
Thank you. Just as a follow-on, the second part was, when do we think it'll actually be open for people to visit?
No, so I think that just to take a step back, I think when I was at Scrutiny a few times ago, this did come up around the pace of it and kind of things like that. And I was quite open saying we're considering various options around it to make sure that it's sustainable going forward in the future. So no formal decision's been made on that in terms of whether it will open or not. Again, no decision's been made. So it's currently shut. The kind of artefacts or kind of collection has been taken out and is in storage. The building in the shape it is now would need some work doing to it, and there's been planning permissions been put forward for that. At the minute, no work has started, and Cabinet have received some options around the future of that building. We've asked for some more information, and then once we've had that back, we'll then make a decision on what the future of that is. But we're committed to the culture and history of South Ribble, and that will be strong throughout the cultural strategy, which I've had a sneak peek of, and it's going to be a good read.
Councillor Ashton, or did you? Yep, Councillor Ashton.
Yes, if I could just move into the communities and leisure section. The first one was on the forecasted reduction in public health income from Lancashire County Council, and I can't remember what that income was for anyway, and if there are any impacts of the fact that we're actually going to lose that income in terms of service delivery to the public.
So there was a specific post that had been funded for a couple of years, and we'd assumed that we would get continued funding for that post, but it ended. I mean, it was due to end, but our assumption was that it would continue again. That ended, so the income stream was lost. The post continued.
Sorry, so did the person was the person in a fixed term contract type post, or
No,
am I getting hold of the wrong end of the stick?
the person themselves weren't in a fixed term contract because they've been with the organisation for quite some time. The role in itself had changed slightly to reflect the funding. We'd assumed that we would get that continuing, but they ceased it in year.
Right. And is that going to have any impact in terms of service delivery that the public would notice?
There shouldn't be. As part of the budget setting, we've accounted for the fact that that income's gone and services themselves, there's no corresponding cut being made.
Okay. Thank you. And then my second one, still on communities and leisure, and the final bullet point was just around the various grants we've received, the fairly significant grants for Homes for Ukraine, the Afghan relocation and assistance policy, which is actually amounting up to a fairly chunky sum, of which a relatively small amount's committed so far. And it says it can be spent in current and future financial years. Are there any time limits on any of it, or are they all just with us and open-ended?
Yeah, no, we've got the money, and it's there, and the team kind of actively look for things to help them various different communities. To be fair, the funding's quite generous for what the actual needs of the communities are, which then allows us to kind of help all residents with various things that money does. So the community teams are actively looking at. There's a new, I think there's been an EMD recently approved from or due to be approved from Councillor Berlinski-Gelder about support to one of these communities for a service that we would procure, which is relatively low cost but quite high impact. But just naturally, I had a conversation with Neil and Jennifer Mullin about this, and naturally a lot of these grants that we receive are quite generous compared to what the actual need is, so it helps us to kind of be a bit dynamic in terms of supporting the wider community's budget.
Could I just ask you to explain EMD as an acronym, please?
Executive member decision, so they are online. If people want to read through them, they'll see them. But yeah, how cabinet members make decisions in a formal way.
Councillor Green.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Councillor Roberts going to take you to section 19, please, customer and digital, and specifically the fourth bullet point. And can you explain why the income received from maintaining the FCC waste vehicle contract has changed?
So I'm going to bring Neil in. I'm going to bring Neil in because he'll be able to explain it a little bit better.
So FCC pay a couple of elements. One is a rental fee, but actually they pay for repairs and maintenance on the vehicles as part of the Chorley contract that happens to take place there. So the income is variable depending on the kind of need of those vehicles. So we charge clearly the parts cost, but then also an element of our own staff time.
Thank you. Councillor Bollenberg.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to take you to page 42. It's the second bullet point down, which says there's a £37,000 overspend on grounds maintenance in the parks and open spaces. And we were just wondering what was the reason for this overspend, and could it have been better budgeted?
I'm not specifically sure of kind of which parks or wherever, if you see what I mean. So as the maintenance, there was great demand. I know some of these things are dictated by weather as well, and kind of fluctuation. Neil will be able to tell us whether it's kind of impacted the budget setting for next year. Generally, if there's an overspending, the team the team will be able to identify whether it's a one-off spend or whether actually it's going to be an ongoing one. So if it's an ongoing, is it an ongoing one or
An element of it, yeah.
is it an element if it's ongoing? So that'll be kind of uplifted in the budget for next year for that specific park bit. If you want to know specifically which bits it we've done more on, we can find that out, I'm sure. Yeah, so if you take that on action.
Thank you. On page 42, the fourth bullet point from the top of the page about water charges, we're all aware that the utility companies put them up last year by 20% plus and are doing the same this year. Every householder will understand that. I'm just wondering what can be done maybe at Worden in the way of mitigating that rainwater collection for use in toilets and irrigation, for example. Has any thought been put into how we might mitigate those increasing costs?
It's a great question, and it's a question that I will be asking Councillor Farnworth after tonight's meeting, so we'll take that as an action and report back.
Thank you. And we need to ask if there are any members who are online who are not in the committee who wish to ask any questions. Thank you. We move on to the Capital Balance Sheet Monitoring Report, and yet again, Councillor Wesley Roberts, supported by Neil Holton, Director of Finance. If I can take you to page 53, paragraph 2, the fourth bullet point. This is about the overflow car park at Worden Park. When will the overflow car park on Worden Park generate income, and what will the charging policy particularly be for Runshaw College students?
Thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, so happy to present this report. No, it's okay. It's fine. I'm not. I must assure Councillor Burton-Johnson that I'm not usually on for this length of time, or I'm not usually on first. So don't get used to it.
And my apology is I should have asked Councillor Roberts to introduce the report before asking the question. I'm just aware of the time.
No, I was only going to go straight to that, other than to say that we expect capital spend to be kind of spent by the end of the year. At the minute, it's only 50% spent, but we will get there. And that's quite normal for this time of year. In terms of the Worden car park, there was a consultation before Christmas. It did close before Christmas, and that was putting proposals to introduce charging on the overflow at Worden Park, so it'd still be 2 hours free, but the income generation would allow us to open the overflow car park all year round. It means we'll be able to invest in the surface and then release some of that pressure for the community. And it's well known that because of the college and 5,000 students that go there, and whilst the college spend £1 million on bus subsidies and bus passes, kids want to drive, and that's the reality. So we're dealing with the reality of trying to ease that for the local area, and also provide more parking for residents in Leyland to visit Worden Hall and visit the park and the duck pond and wherever else they want to go, whether it's the mini golf, I don't know, or the ice cream vans. That's a bit of a controversial on the ice cream vans. People always raise that around the prices, but we will keep it under review. But there's lots of alternate vendors and various vendors, lots of competition. In terms of the overflow car park, I'm told, so we basically at the last cabinet meeting we went out, we did the consultation, we've gone through the consultation responses, and this is returning back to cabinet to say we're going to do the work, we're going to establish the budget. We're working through the finer details of kind of when it will be done. We'd like it to be done kind of before the summer holidays, if not before. In terms of pricing points, it was outlaid in the consultation, so 2 hours free. 3 hours is £2, and then the further you go, there's more charges. The kind of consultation talked about having a pass for for a permit pass for students, and that is kind of something that we are going to establish in terms of when we sell them and what we sell them at. I think the price we put on was it 400? I'd have to check the figure. I think it was about £400. It might have been a little bit cheaper because you can only use it term time. But in terms of what we'd intend to do is invest in the car park, open it up, see what the usage was like for across the community, and kind of then we take an assessment of how many permits we would sell, and the price is already outlined. We just to kind of reiterate, it's 2 hours free, it's still free at weekends, and it's still free during school holidays as well. So it will be good to bring more people in who want to spend longer at the park, and also help the local community.
Thank you. And Councillor Bollenberg.
I have the joy of a 4-part question. So once I've asked the 4 parts, feel free to come back to me on any one of them. It's on page 58, paragraph 36. It's about household bins. We were wondering whether the bins are a depreciating asset. I guess with a supplementary on that, as if they are, what is the depreciation model used? What total value is put on them? What is the expected lifespan? And do we replace them, as a council, do we replace them after a certain time?
Neil's laughing at the side of me because he's had this conversation, he knows all the answers, so he's been hoping this one came up.
I'm smiling because the person who probably knows the answers is sat in a different seat in this room at the moment. In respect of the household waste bins, we do hold them on our asset register. I think the reality is that they last far longer than what we depreciate them for. So generally, and I'm going to look this way, but I think it's about 10 years we depreciate them over. But the reality is the bins often last much longer than that. What tends to happen is we buy new bins each year and there's a cyclical turnover of that. And you'll see that's why we've started adding to the capital programme. So we had some conversations with the auditors in respect of this exact question this year, which was, how are you ever replenishing your stock? And it's a relatively small figure actually each year, because the reality is the bins last far longer than how we depreciate them over. Clearly, in terms of the council, depreciation is largely irrelevant because it doesn't actually impact anything in terms of our day-to-day finances. But yeah, the bins are depreciated over that 10-year period. We do buy some new ones each year. Often they're paid for by developer contributions, so any new ones are paid for by the development themselves.
Just to add on to that, if you do move into a new build house and the developer says you need to buy the bin, you can claim a refund from the council.
Personal experience, I suspect.
Indeed, yeah.
Do we charge residents for replacement of bins that are more than 10 years old?
I think it's we're talking about, I was going to say it's a grey area, but I didn't know if you were talking about grey bins. So I think it's always about who's at fault, who's damaged it, and our officers are always prudent in kind of taking a pragmatic approach to get the right outcome for residents and the council.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members who are not on the committee? No indication. We have formulations for the last report, item 6, as well as item 7. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Some of the themes from tonight's discussion on item 6. The committee thanks the Cabinet Member and Director for attending and answering questions. The committee congratulates the Cabinet on closely achieving the budget and also for the comprehensive report. The committee is grateful for the offer of a member briefing on the Fit for the Future programme. The committee suggests that the cultural strategy and commercial strategy makes the most of the Civic Centre Conference Centre facilities as an asset. The committee welcomes the offer of further information on the progress being made on increasing income from Worden Hall. The committee looks forward to receiving further information on the grounds maintenance overspend and also on rainwater harvesting in Worden Park. Thank you, Chair, for that one. With regards to item 7, the capital programme, the committee thanks the Cabinet Member and Director for attending and answering questions, and the committee welcomes the detailed report. Thank you, Chair.
Are you content with those members?
Chair, could I just...
Sorry, just a moment.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Chair. Just agenda item 6 at the top. Just checking. I think it said thank you for to the Cabinet. I just wanted to make sure that our excellent officers were given the praise as well. I couldn't quite hear it.
I will be very happy for one of the comments that we make to be that we congratulate the staff for the acute level of the budgeting that has been done this year, the excellent level of budgeting that has been done this year. I think that needs to be fed back. So are we all content? Councillor King, are you? Yeah, just wanted to check. Thank you. We need to move on. We have another speaker, another person to examine. Very grateful to you, Councillor Roberts and Neil Holton, for the time you've put in. It's been quite a long meeting this evening. We do understand that, but we did decide that we wanted to go into some more detail than we might at other times, and we hope it's been helpful to you. We move on to, if you need to go, then please feel free to do so. We need to move on to item 8, South Ribble Q3 Performance Monitoring Report, 25-26. I'm going to ask Councillor Matthew Tomlinson, Leader of the Council, who is supported by Carolyn Wolfenden, Director of Change and Delivery, to present the item.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just to add my thanks to Wes and Neil for the very professional way they responded to your questions. It's credit to them both. I am cognizant of time, so I'm just going to say that I think this is a very positive report. In the vast majority of the indicators and measures we hold ourselves against, you'll see that we are either green or amber for reasons of timing. Obviously, human beings as they are, we tend to focus on the exceptions, and I'm sure you'll be given an opportunity to do that. But other than that, I'll happily sit here and await your questions.
Thank you. I think I would have to thank the officers for the presentation of the report. The way that this has developed into the colour categories and so forth, and the monitoring of longer term trends, which we previously asked for, have been implemented, and we're very grateful to you for the clarity that there is in the way that this report comes over. On page 72, paragraph 22, which talks about the launch of Jubilee Gardens, which is a fantastic project of the council, having had awards for its architecture, and we don't know quite what the current occupancy rate is, but there has been comments on social media about this. Could you provide us with an update?
Yeah, there have indeed been comments in social media, which I do my best to ignore, but when it's in the Leyland Hub, Mrs Tomlinson brings them to my attention, and I did make the fatal error of getting involved in a to and fro. I have to say, the experience we've got from Chorley, where they've now opened 2 of these, is the worst thing you can possibly do when you open a facility like this. Is like 75 people move in on day 1. Everybody that will take up residence at Jubilee Gardens will have some element of care need, and come with some sort of care package that we need to make sure other people, because we don't deal with care, that will be Lancashire County Council, we need to make sure that that care package is in place. And so it was always the strategy to open this facility over a 9-month period. So it's been open, I'm not sure exactly how long it is since we welcomed our first resident, but I do know that now we've got 25 residents in there, with a further 9 either at assessment or having been approved. Now, the manager there, I did speak to her at some length before I replied to the comments on social media. She is absolutely content that we are right on target for this facility being filled within the 9 months that we always planned and we always budgeted for. The 40-year budget that we presented to council when we were first looking at how this would pay for itself had less income coming in year 1 than it did in the subsequent years, and that was because of exactly how we planned it.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
Thanks, Chairman. Evening, Councillor Tomlinson. Can I take you to paragraph 26, please, on page 73, which talks about the commercial strategy? And please, could you talk us through that strategy, its aims, and what outcomes we will see?
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Roberts alluded to this quite a lot in his presentation, and under the Fit for the Future strategy, we're absolutely determined that whilst we are a council and a public body, we also have to run our facilities on a commercially viable basis. And in fact, we've got someone doing a big piece of work for us now where we're looking at every single property and piece of land that we own right across the borough to justify why we own this piece of land, why we own this office, why we own this. We own offices, shops, warehouses, as well as what we know as the big six here, Moss Side, our leisure centres, the tennis centre. So we do own quite a raft of property. We know that because of the cuts that were made following the financial crash, that we have not managed those properties as well as we ought to. And that means that a lot of properties haven't had a rent review for a long time. A lot of properties we weren't sure about the such practical things as when the last Legionnaires test was conducted, when the last gas safety test was last conducted, and we've spent probably about 4 years to get to where we are now, where we do know what properties we own, we do know when the next rent review is due, we do know all those things that you would expect us to know, and that has enabled us to say that now we do need to have this long-term strategy that says when we do things, we do them on a commercial basis unless there's a good reason for us to do so to address the other corporate strategies that we have as a council. So this will undoubtedly get some pushback if you're an active local council in your community and a local shop rents their shop from the council. You may well find you're coming under some pressure if they haven't had a rent review for 12 years and suddenly we do a rent review that says actually market rate says a shop like this should be paying X per square metre, and that's how it works in commercial rents. They will be done on a square metre, that's me being imperial, let's go metric, on a square, there will be a market rate for square metre, and that has to be our starting point. That has to be the starting point of a responsible organisation, because our property portfolio has to do two things really. It has to support our corporate priorities around economic growth and job creation, but it also has to support the council tax. So there's a dual responsibility there. Yes, we want these shops and offices to provide places of work, to provide economic activity across the borough, but they have to support the council tax by bringing in an appropriate amount of rent. So that's one illustration of what the corporate strategy is trying to do, whether it's renting out places in here. So we talked before about the NHS, who now rent out a big proportion of the ground floor here. It's, for those who don't know, it's where IT people used to be. So, we rejigged upstairs. Our IT people are now upstairs, and we've been able to find a partner who wanted somewhere in the centre of Leyland where it's easy access, where it's parking, where all those other things, who can rent that space out for a reasonably long-term rent and bring money in. Everything that this council owns needs to either be providing, a corporate, something towards our corporate strategy. So clearly, we're never going to sell Worden Park. There might be a commercial argument that says this is prime land, but we're never going to sell Worden Park because of our clean and green corporate strategy. But we will look to Worden Park to say, can this car park generate a bit of income? Is Worden Hall appropriately staffed so that it can bring in the functions and the activity that we need it to do? So everything is being looked at, everything is being assessed on those two things. The corporate strategy, but also there has to be a commercial strategy. And I absolutely think that's the right thing to do.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Bullenberg.
Thank you, Chair. I was very interested in the rent review, as I am an active ward councillor. where can we find out more about that? What's in our area? When we're likely to find out if the review's going ahead within our area?
I think that purely commercial activity, to be fair, we wouldn't probably tell a ward councillor. It's just part of the day job. You know, if there's a warehouse on Walton Summit that we own and the rent review is up, the rent review is up, and that's just part of the business of the council. We wouldn't normally say to a ward councillor, oh, you need to know that this is happening, because actually that's part of the strategic work of the council, the operational side of the council that I, as a ward councillor, I prefer to be not part of, frankly, because the pressure that can be put on you then to say, oh, I need to do something about this, when actually that is the strategy we've all agreed, that is the way the council works. And as an elected member, we have to be very careful that we sit in here and scrutinise strategies and policies, but there has to be a line where we don't start getting involved in individual decisions of the operational side of the council, and that's to protect yourself as well as to protect the council.
Would I be right in saying that there is some commercial confidentiality involved in this?
Again, that's a perfect illustration of one of the reasons why councillors have to be, especially new councillors, have to be really aware of what their role is in the community and with the organisation. So we do set policies, and these are big things that say this is what we're going to do. But when someone affected by that policy is in your ward, we've already agreed that policy and we can support people, but we really should be careful about getting involved in individual members of the public or organisations that are affected by those policies. So I think, yeah, it is commercially sensitive, and we need to be very careful about how we share that information.
Can I move on to page 74 and paragraph 30, which is about the figures that we have for planning consents to be made, I think. Right. Paragraph. Oh, yeah. So we have figures relating to planning applications decided. What we don't have in this report is any figures about planning completions, whether once granted they come back for a second application, how many are applied for but never or not within the time completed, so they have to apply after 5 years or whatever because it's expired, and whether people come back for changes of conditions, for example. Would it be possible for us to have a bit more detail every now and again on those matters?
I think I've always said before, we'll give Scrutiny whatever they want. You know, if any figures you want, any statistics that you require to assist you to do your job, we'll provide them with respect. And I hate saying with respect because it means I'm going to push back against somebody. This is the corporate report of the performance of the council. So what we're saying here is when people come to us and put in planning applications, it's beholden to us to deal with those applications in a certain amount of time, and we do, and that's why why it's rated as green. We deal with planning applications when they come in the appropriate time that's set for us. Now, what happens to them after that is not necessarily within our gift. It's not to say it's not useful or interesting information, but it's not a part of our this report.
So we'd be better asking that question for the appropriate cabinet member. We will hold that in ready for the appropriate councillor. Councillor Bollenberg.
Thank you, Chair. Page 77, develop a housing strategy. We were wondering if the resources now in place to produce this key strategy, and could Scrutiny be consulted on the draft of this strategy?
I'm going to bring Caroline in, but just to say, we've been really keen that housing and homelessness is a key part of the council's work that as an administration we want to prioritise. We've now got council housing. We didn't have any council housing when we took over this council, I'm delighted that the government has just raised the levels at which you have to apply to become a housing authority. So one of the reasons, in my view, one of the reasons that councils have stopped building houses over the last 30 years is the right to buy. Because if you build a council house, you invest all that money and someone rents it off you for 5 years and then has the right to buy it at a discount, and you lose that investment. And that has been a massive disincentive. And the rules until last week were if you had less than 200 council houses, you were protected from the right to buy. So many councils in the 90s, like we did, got rid of all our council houses, gave them to arm's length companies like Progress or New Progress as they were called, that have become more and more arm's length and have less and less to do with the local councils where those houses came from. Or some councils would have up to 170, 180 and then just stop building anymore. And the limit has been raised from 200 to 1,000. So that could significantly give councils more confidence that they can get involved in this market. So the houses in Leyland Town Centre that are being delivered as part of the town deal under the original financial modelling, where we're going to have to sell off half of those housing to help pay for the development that we're now seeing, because of changes that happened with the actual overall development. We're going to be able to keep them all. So in terms of actual providing those houses that the market frankly can't provide, we can't rely on the market, because we know, and we've spoken to house builders, they can't build 1 and 2 bedroomed houses that are financially viable for their shareholders. And let's be honest, they're private companies, they have a responsibility to their shareholders, and that's why they build lots and lots of 3, 4 and 5 bed houses, because that's where the money is. So where the market fails or can't provide, it's my belief we need to try and step into that space if we can. There's also been some changes to responsibilities around homelessness. So a new duty to, what was the word? Duty to collaborate. Collaborate has been brought forward, and we discussed that in the Chorley and South Ribble Partnership today. Homelessness, we all know, it's no good. Well, it's too late once people present as homeless. If someone presents as homeless to us, the damage has already been done, and it will take us weeks to find them somewhere permanent again. So they could end up in temporary accommodation, in bed and breakfast. What we need people as soon as they're beginning to struggle with their accommodation, whether they're behind on the rent, whether they're struggling with neighbours, whether they don't think if they're overcrowded, they need to come to us and come to us early, and we can work with them. But all the evidence is when that happens, we have a good outcome. We have a good outcome the sooner that people come to us. So there is now this duty to collaborate, and we're talking to the NHS about how they can tell us about people who go to the doctor with mental health issues or asthma because of the condition of the house that they're in. All these things, how people can tell us early, and we can work with people. And all those things will build into our housing strategy, which is the big overarching document. And I've talked about some very specific things, and I've not answered your question. I've just talked for a while, but I hope you found that interesting. And Caroline is going to answer your question.
So there is a draft version of the strategy that's been developed. It has been initially shared with Cabinet members, but the intention is that there will be a formal consultation period, which you will be able to feed into.
Just a comment, I think I'm right in thinking that Scrutiny can ask to see those documents that have gone to Cabinet, and I think we'll be grateful to do so. I'm personally thrilled to see the number go up from 200 to 1,000. I've had personal conversations myself with both Lisa Nandy and one of the junior ministers in the department, particularly on the number limit. So I'm hoping that maybe I had a little bit of a hand in that. It'd be nice to think so. Councillor Green.
Sorry, Chair, can I just because I was
Councillor Ashton,
going
yes.
to ask something. Well, I was going to comment right at the end after Councillor Green's spoken, but it's actually pertinent to what you've just been talking about. So it just seems to make more sense to do it now. And I was actually going to welcome the new indicators at the end of the report around homelessness, empty properties, etc. I think they're really good inclusions, and now I understand much more why they're in there. So to welcome those. So thank you.
Councillor Green.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Can I take you, Councillor Thomason, to page 78 and look at sickness absence levels? The levels of sickness absence continue to be on the increase despite previous action plans, and for instance in Q3 it was nearly 50% above our target. I realise the numbers are quite low, which might have an influence on this, but what more can be done to improve this important indicator moving forward?
Yeah, and we've discussed this before, to be fair, haven't we? And we've discussed about the things that we do, about supporting people who are off sick, whether it's offering occupational therapy or and what we do about return to work interviews. I will always come back to the fact that the target, which compares us against supposedly like-for-like councils, is slightly skewed against us, because we took back in-house our refuse collection team, who are obviously doing a very physical job out in all weathers. We took back in-house the people that work in our leisure centres, again some of them who are doing physical work, and that is the type of work that's more likely to lead you to have time off with musculoskeletal issues, or even, as you can imagine, how hardy our waste collection staff are. I just can't comprehend what their immune systems must be like, because they are literally outside all day, every day. And I would argue that skews the figure. That doesn't get away from the fact that it is red, and I did say at the beginning, I've no doubt we'll talk about the exception, and we need to continue to do what we can to keep that as low as we can. I don't know if there's anything more specific that Caroline wants to add to that.
Not really. I mean, obviously the point that you've made with regards to sort of like, you know, operational non-office based staff is absolutely affecting those figures. You know, all the work that we're doing to try to improve performance is particularly around that attendance management and supporting managers in being able to take, obviously, you know, staff like through those processes, and, you know, as Councillor Tomlinson said, looking at the different offer for well-being around, you know, occupational health, ensuring that our staff have got provision of like flu vaccinations and things like that. So, you know, we will just continue obviously to you know, implement those kind of initiatives for our staff and monitor the sickness absence and do what we can to improve that.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up to that. I mean, we've got that red against our own standards. How does that compare with other councils? I don't need an answer to that, but it's something perhaps that...
And again, I think I have said, Chair Welsh, we don't need an answer to that. I mean, we can look again at that, but it is difficult because a lot of district councils have outsourced the waste collection. They've outsourced, I mean, even, you know, that bastion of socialism, Preston, they've outsourced their waste collection and outsourced the leisure provision. So it's difficult to find an exact match.
Thank you very much for the report, and to both yourself, Councillor Tomlinson, and to Caroline Wolfenden for the sharing of knowledge with us and answering our questions. We have some recommendations that have been formulated for us.
Thank you, Chair. Some of the themes tonight that you may wish to recommend. The committee thanks the leader and director for attending and answering the questions. The committee commends the presentation and clear layout of the report. The committee welcomes the positive progress being made on the corporate plan actions and performance indicators. The committee looks forward to the scheduled spotlight review of discharging planning conditions and enforcement being presented to the next meeting of the committee. And the committee asks for a copy of the draft housing strategy be circulated to members of the committee, to members of the council as part of the consultation process. Thank you, Chair.
Are members happy with those recommendations? Thank you. We can allow you to depart. And sorry you had to wait so long, but as we come to the end of the financial year, we needed to give appropriate scrutiny to the earlier reports. Yeah. I'm going to say to the committee members that we're going to have a 2-minute break because I need to use the facilities. Let's just complete the business of the meeting. We have before us the report of the Corporate Performance and Budget Scrutiny Committee report on resident engagement and democratic participation at the Scrutiny Review Group. Have you had time to read this? I'm grateful to the staff for putting this together from the several months of work that have gone into it. I'm grateful to the members of the review group. For me, these reviews are some of the most satisfying bits of work that Scrutiny does, where we can actually go into depth as opposed to going through the breadth of detail in the reports that come to us. There are a number of suggestions that are listed, and if you're happy that we approve this report, those will go to full council and then on to cabinet. Any comments, Councillor Green?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Can I echo your comments in terms of the support that we've received from our officers, naming two in particular, Darren and Ben, for their excellent work throughout in doing research, in supporting the councillors carrying out the review, and in drafting the report so well at the end. So thanks should be minuted to our officers in that regard, and to the witnesses who came and gave evidence at various points and we did meet with lots of different people who did add to the work of the review. And also, finally, thanks to you, Councillor Pillinger, for chairing that review in a way that kept everybody involved and made sure that we worked towards a successful outcome, all being well. I think the report does add some value. Moving forward, it's a matter for Council and Cabinet to consider in more detail as to whether we can adopt the recommendations, but hopefully most of those will be adopted, and that will allow us to engage even more effectively with residents of South Hibble moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? My final comment then is that it is vitally important, particularly at this time when people's confidence in the democratic system is low, that we as a council do everything we can to increase that confidence. That means we've got to be at local level a council that does the job well, and a council that has integrity. And I hope that some of what comes out of this will help to communicate that that's exactly what South Ribble Borough Council is. Are you willing to approve that? Yes. Yes, thank you very much. Committee matters, item 10. I don't think anyone has attended any of the conferences from the LGA this year. I did last year and it was very valuable. There will be an opportunity to factor that into your diary. We will let you know what's available, but it would be quite nice if a group of us were able to travel to one of the conferences at Warwick University. They're weekends, very valuable in terms of being able to talk with other people from other councils about what's going on. And I think that's particularly important as we move towards local government reorganisation, that we keep our networks clear. Some of the things that I have been doing relating to LGR, local government reorganisation, come out of contacts that I've made during the last one I went to. I regret that I had a clash in my diary earlier in the year on the one I was booked into this year. But please, will you make your attendance at those, or at least take the opportunity. There is coming up the day conference, local government day conference, which I'm going to in Birmingham. Are you as well, Darren? Yeah, Darren and I are both going to in Birmingham. There may be some feedback from that. I suspect it's too late for anyone else to book in. No? Oh, so if you're free
12th of March.
On the 12th of March, to get to Birmingham and come to the day conference, perhaps you'd let Darren know as soon as possible. And would like to go, of course. So I think that covers training. Cabinet forward plan. I don't think I want to do any major work on it at the moment, but just to say, please will you make sure that you keep up to date on the forward plan. I hope we will see something of the matter that we asked them to report that's gone to Cabinet, where we can get it a little earlier. So I hope that will come to us as well to look at individually, and then we can make our comments through Darren Crenshaw back to the Cabinet, but we can coordinate those. And finally, the Corporate Performance and Budget Scrutiny Committee forward plan. We're asked to consider that. I have to confess I've not looked at it. I've been having medical treatment until a week or so ago, since beginning of end of November, and it's just been beyond my my capabilities at that time. I've been sleeping more than normal. So the last thing I need to say anything about is local government reform. One of the areas I've been putting my mind to is how we scrutinise the process. We are actually involved in it at the moment, but we are in this difficult legal position that until the statutory instrument is published in the autumn, probably, I thought it was going to be when they told us what the new council will be, that we we can't really legally do very much, but we have to be like that guy in the story who was hung out of a train that isn't stopping at the platform and got his legs running ahead of being dropped onto the platform so that he can get going. And so I want to suggest there's two possibilities on how we go forward with a specific scrutiny regime for LGR that scrutinises what's happening at South Ribble. Because there are officers in meetings like Neil goes to at county level, for example, and we need to be able to ask what's going on. One is for an agreement between the two committees that we've got. Well, both of them need the agreement of both committees. One is that we take on that responsibility as the internal committee. The other is that we form a board with the two chairs of each committee, a Liberal Democrat, because that you wouldn't be represented on that, and an additional Labour member, because that gives us the political balance that reflects the council. So a 6-member board, which would have the remit of dealing with local government reform. It need not necessarily be both chairs and both vice chairs. It could be 2 members of each of the committee, plus those other 2 that I mentioned. I don't know what you think of that, but I think we'd need to ask the other committee what they think, and B, then we would have to have the approval of the council.
Way forward.
Yep. Are we happy that we can communicate that to the other committee and ask their opinions and make that proposal? The second thing that we need to do, and this, I've actually put a document to the leader of the council and through Democratic Services, which I've adapted from Somerset new unitary authority, the formation of that. They put together a joint scrutiny board of all the councils that were involved. That would really need to be planned for before the announcement in June, with us presumably concentrating on the possibility of either 4 or 3 unitary authorities in the council, because frankly I can't see it being anything else than that, so that by the time we get to June there is a structure in place. So I've put that to the council leader. If you want the copy of the document that I produced, I can circulate it to you, just to report to you that this is such an important matter for the council that we dare not leave it. And the advice of the Local Government Association and the Centre for Scrutiny and Governance is that you cannot put scrutiny in place too early.
Can I just, I was just checking, we have got another meeting in a month, and I actually think it would not be a bad idea to put a discrete item on our agenda, because my mind is a bit boggled by 8:15 in the evening. But I do think you're absolutely right, and we do need to. And I'm not saying not do what we've already said we'd do, but actually to take a look, stop and think in the round about how we're going to do this.
I don't think we've got another meeting then until June.
You mean after the 9th of March? We've got one, yeah.
So if I put a paper together that outlines what I've just spoken about, we can put it on the agenda of the next committee, but we can also, if you're happy for me to put it into paper, to put that to the other scrutiny committee so that we can work out together, because it's both internal and external. We have to decide together whether we make it the remit of one of the committees or we do it jointly. So that can go to our committee. I don't know when the other one next meets.
In March.
In March as well. So we can deal with it at the March committees, and those that the authorisation for that work can then be put to the full council as necessary. Thank you for that extra. Is there anything else anybody wishes to raise? And I'm sorry to keep you so long, but I think we've done some valuable work this evening. Thank you to our officers as well for staffing us.